Start. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Gary Parker. I'm the Associate Dean for External Affairs and Director of the Clark Fox Policy Institute, and I am delighted to be able to speak with you today at Open Classroom, where we are having an official book release party, and you're all been invited. We're going to be talking today about this book. Yes, I actually have a copy. It's Child Behavioral Health in Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's been edited by Ssewamala, Sensoy Bahar, and Mary McKay, and we'll be hearing from all of them today. And we'll also be hearing from a number of the folks who have made contributions to this book, who are joining us today from a number of different countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, and we're so delighted. And today we're going to talk about child mental development and the many fascinating aspects of that in this book. So I wanted to tell you just a little bit about how we're going to run the show. We're going to hear from our the co-directors, who will share some words, and then we're going to hear from 6 chapter authors representing 5 African nations. And because you're joining us today, you're going to get a 20% discount code through the publisher. Our friend Laura Peer is going to post the discount code in the chat box throughout the talk. And also I want to thank Springer for allowing us the opportunity to share that discount code with you. If you're watching us on YouTube, just do a simple search for iChad Washington University. The website will come up, and they've put it right on the homepage of the iChad website, so you can get that discount code real easy. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the former dean of the Brown School, but now the vice provost of interdisciplinary initiatives in the office of the provost. And she's going to highlight her new role and tell us a little bit about her commitment to Sub-Saharan Africa and her contributions to this work. Please give a nice virtual welcome to Dr. Mary McKay.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for the Brown School and our Open Classroom team for allowing us to come together virtually. So it is my privilege really to kind of acknowledge and elevate Dr. Fred and Dr. Ozge, my co-editors, and really they are the reason that we have this book. So Dr. Fred is an esteemed professor at the Brown School, an associate dean, director of multiple centers and training programs. Fred, I could take the whole time talking about your accomplishments. But I think a couple of things that I most admire about you is that you are able to bring people together around, addressing the serious needs of children and their families, and directly going at, eliminating poverty that really undermines kids and family thriving. And so the chapter authors represent an extended set of colleagues that we brought together as part of our individual work on the continent, but really under an umbrella that we call Smart Africa, a center that brought institutions and investigators from all over the continent, a south-to-south collaboration and a strength-building opportunity to focus in on kids. Now, Dr. Fred, you are an amazing convener and leader, and we're all here because of your leadership, but the other person that we're here for and with is Dr. Ozge. This would not have happened, Ozge, without you. So you are an incredible globally focused scholar. You're an assistant professor at the Brown School. Your commitment to true collaboration across the globe is just immensely impressive. And you're just a terrific organizer. So if you think about this co-edited book as an organizing project to bring authors from across the globe together to write on topics that they know deeply and to share their knowledge with others. Without you, Ozge, we would not be here at all. So thank you very, very much. So what is this book about? It is truly about having authors from the continent elevate their knowledge, their expertise, inform what needs to happen in terms of an agenda, for children and their families. It is also about mirroring radical collaboration, where we are in support of a common mission, which is to help children and families do better. And science becomes a real vehicle and a tool for that. These are incredible scholars from across the globe, and I've learned so much from all of them, both personally and professionally. And so the real talent, Gary, is in the authors of the chapters. And so I'm so happy that some of them are with us today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, except to say you all have taught me so much, and I hope to continue to learn and grow with all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Fred, Ozge, did you want to share just a couple of words, or should we jump right into the chapters? We'll jump right in. All right, they're anxious to hear from our guests who are joining us from all over the continent of Africa. So we're going to start first with Celestine Mutuyimana, who's here from the Center for Mental Health, the College of Medicine and Health Sciences, the University of Rwanda. So please welcome Dr. Celestine.
Sorry, thank you. I am presenting the chapter related to the determinants of intergenerational trauma transmission, a case of genocide survivors in Uganda. I would like to share, is the share possible, share option? Is share option possible?
Yes, it is. You should have the ability to do that.
Oh.
There should be a green button right at the bottom of your screen. It says share screen.
Just a second, because when I try, I don't find the PowerPoint open. So sorry. Okay, it works. Yeah, it's a chapter determinants of intergenerational trauma transmission in the case of the genocide survivors in Rwanda. And my name is Celestine Mutuyimana. I am now in Switzerland. I'm representing 3 authors, including Professor Sensoy Bahar and Dr. Cindy Kasadi. Then the first question is why conducting an intergenerational study in Rwanda? Because there is exposure to genocide against the Tutsi during the 1994 genocide. And there is also a high prevalence of mental disorders, including PTSD and depression among survivors, but also a result of a comparative study of 3 groups survivors, non-targeted and 1959 returnees, indicated that there is a relationship between parents' PTSD and the PTSD of their offspring, but also the likelihood of developing PTSD was associated with the survival status. But the first question was, what is exactly transmitted in the content? If we talk about the transmissions and what is exactly transmitted. In this research, and it is written in this chapter, we find that the first transmitted content is a longing. That means that unresolved grief of the parents is often also present among their offspring. The offspring, they have yearning feelings for the unknown lost people, as did their parents. The second thing is in a feeling of emptiness. As you know, in Rwandan context, it's better when a child is raised in a surrounding environment with relatives, friends, extended families. But this is not the case. Was not the case most of the members have been massacred during the genocide. No, then the offspring was always lacking for the model to imitate, claiming for the genealogy. Where is our extended families as other children have? What is people that we can imitate? We don't have our grandparents. And then there is a feelings of helplessness and empty family. The third was the heart wound. Post-genocide, there is a living continuous psychosocial, economic, and emotional pain, which seems to never end. And then the children seems to be responsible to help their parents overcoming their struggle, and then they assimilate the trauma of their parents because they feel responsible and they want to be like their parents. We can say the life of their parents equal to the life of their offspring. But then we say, what is the mechanisms of such kind of transmission? The three mechanisms have been identified, including attachment. Attachment may say, maybe on one side, there is parents closed to their offspring, or they are parents distant to their offspring. All two ways provide a mechanism of transmission through attachments. And then we have identified through three types of parents: hesitant, those who have been experiencing a horrible traumatic things, and they say we are not able to express such horrible things to our children. We have disclosures. They are very close to their children. They think this can help. The children can help them to overcome the struggle they are meeting today, the experience of their trauma they are meeting today. They are also the silent people who say, no, it's not, there is no matter to talk about what happened to us. Then the second mechanism is storytelling. The storytelling shaped by the environment. They are children, offspring living after trauma in settlements of survivors, named settlements for the genocide survivors. And always they say, why are we living here? And this is make us kind of a traumatic wounds. And some of them, they live nearby memorials. Some of them, they live where their relatives have been buried. Another style was parenting style. Through ways, and these parenting styles also have been amplified by symptoms of PTSD. And this, some of them, they're overprotective, others they're neglecting, and harsh punishments because of trauma symptoms. And in what to do, we can say we need to break the cycle. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That is really fascinating research and critically important as we look at multi-generational trauma to the Tutsi genocide in Rwanda. And you can find that chapter in this book. Again, it's available by Springer Publishing. We've put a discount code in the chat, and we hope that you will pick up the book and learn more. So next up, I'd like to invite Agatha Kafuko. She's from the Department of Social Work and Social Administration at the McKay University in Kampala, Uganda. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Agatha.
Thank you very much, Gary. Good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I am going to present the chapter that we did with my colleagues. I did this work with Claire Banjirana and Timothy Opobo, who work with the Africhild Center. Timothy Opobo is the Executive Director of the Africhild Center here at McKay University in Uganda, and Claire Banjirana is the Director for Research at the same institution. And our work is on the current state of behavioral health in Uganda, with a focus on violence against children in Uganda. I am not going to use a PowerPoint. I'm just going to briefly talk about the work. We provide a historical perspective to issues around violence against children in Uganda, and we recognize in our work the turning point in 1989 when Uganda ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children. And it is at this point that we began as a country to pay attention to the well-being of children. Prior to that, there wasn't a lot of focus on especially issues around violence. We use in our work the ecological framework as a tool for understanding the drivers and actors in violence against children, but also the responses to violence against children. In Uganda, we recognize that until 2015, there wasn't any comprehensive data to help understand the prevalence of violence against children, although there were reports emerging from the media, but also from the work done by NGOs and multilateral organizations about violence against children. But right now we are at a place where we understand the magnitude, a little bit about the magnitude, but also we have indications of the prevalence of violence against children. We focus on specific types of violence. We talk about sexual violence, physical violence, and emotional violence. And the evidence coming from Uganda shows that the prevalence of violence against children is not different from other places where national violence against children surveys have been done. And we realize that the girls are particularly affected by sexual violence, although the boys are also victims of this kind of violence. We identify the risk factors for sexual violence against children. The parenting and parental presence are risk factors, but also orphan status of a child. Children who are orphaned are more prone. But then we also have evidence from elsewhere that shows that children with disabilities are also susceptible to violence against children. We recognize that sexual violence against children happens in spaces where children are supposed to feel safe, in the schools, but also in their homes. But then in Uganda, we also highlight a particular phenomenon that is driven by our social norms, the issue of child marriage, which although is not highlighted in the book, but this really became prominent during the COVID-19 lockdown period. Our chapter shows that we indicate that there are significant associations between sexual violence against children and behavioral health outcomes. Children who experience sexual violence are more at risk for mental distress, suicidal ideation. They are likely to drink and use drugs. They're also likely to hurt other persons. But we also recognize that boys are particularly affected by mental health outcomes. We talk about physical violence, and we recognize that physical violence is really sustained by the norms that we carry as a community, both in homes and in schools, and mostly used as a tool for enforcing good behavior and teaching children to be responsible. But even with this, the fact, even if we do recognize that it's widespread and widely accepted, the evidence that we put together in our book chapter shows that parents also acknowledge that it can be counterproductive, and it also has negative effects on the children, including leading to their dropping out of school, especially for violence that happens at school, leading to also aggressive behavior and antisocial behavior. Emotional violence is also highly prevalent in the Ugandan context, and it is driven by a norm that children should not question authority and they should be obedient. We identify the different risk factors for violence across the different levels, at the individual level, at the caregiver level, but also at the societal level. At the societal level, we particularly identify the issue of social norms and how these drive up violence against children. Our chapter also highlights the consequences, other consequences of violence, the mental distress, and the health outcomes at the different levels. We talk about teenage pregnancy, that is a consequence of violence, but we also, in our chapter, the implication, recognize the intergenerational nature of violence that is likely outcome of the high prevalence of violence. We talk about access to and utilization of services. We talk about services for violence against children, but also services that address mental health for children in Uganda. And in our chapter, we do recognize the efforts that have been put in place by the government of Uganda through the health sector to make available mental health services. These have been integrated in the primary health care system in Uganda through the decentralization form of governance that Uganda adopted in the 1990s. Although this has happened, we recognize that services are not really available for children. The book chapter also recognizes that slightly more than a third, about 36 of clients who seek for mental health services are children, but then there are a number of bottlenecks that hinder their access to services. But we also do recognize that at the family level, the conceptualization of mental health, and especially where mental health is seen as a curse or witchcraft, means that families are more likely to turn to traditional exorcism and religious exorcism and interpret mental health of children from that lens, and therefore shun the biomedical services that are provided in facilities. And we also recognize that there is an inadequacy of counseling services in the Ugandan context, but also within the families, they face constraints to accessing mental health services. The hospitals are a bit of a distance and they would need transport to access these services, but then there are also issues around stigma. There are also issues within the healthcare facilities regarding availability of specialized health workers, issues around diagnosis. Yeah, so we do hope that this book chapter will provide an opportunity for those social workers and other professionals who work in Uganda, especially in the area of mental health, to do more work and explore more around issues on how violence, the intersections between violence and mental health, but also provide an opportunity for advocacy for those who are engaged in advocating for better services for children to ensure increased opportunities and better well-being for children in our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agatha. It is certainly upsetting to hear about children being the victims of violence, but I'm so grateful that you and your colleagues are doing the research that is needed that demonstrates the supports that would help these kids and young people and adults who have been victims get the services that they need and have the tools for advocacy based on your research. So thank you so much for all that you are doing. I want to remind folks that they should feel free to send in your questions. We will get to Q&A at the end of the program, and I am making a note of the questions that were asked, and we've got a lot of questions coming in, which is really just wonderful. We're going to move on now to our next presenter. We have Dr. Alice Boateng, who's from the Department of Social Work at the University of Ghana. Hello, Dr. Alice, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do, Dr. Alice. Thank you.
So our chapter is titled Child Labor in Ghana, Current Policy, Research and Practice Efforts by Alice and Mavis Dapunjeke, both of University of Ghana, Department of Social Work. So we start our chapter with this introduction. We define the child, definition of child at both the international and national levels, and then definition of child labor, which we see as a controversial issue. Child labor is one of the major social problems here in Sub-Saharan Africa. And it is controversial. That is why we got interested in this, to write this chapter. Much of it is as a result of the African concept of socialization of children through work. So people are ignorant of, some people are ignorant of what constitutes child labor and what does not constitute child labor. The chapter also talks about factors contributing to child labor in Ghana, such as poverty, income shocks, parental absence due to death, divorce, separation, urbanization, illiteracy of parents, lack of formal education and educational opportunities for children, lack of meaningful alternatives, such as quality schools for children. We also discuss the consequences of child labor in Ghana, which include risks and dangers at work, poor school attendance, and poor enrollment of school children, and then poor school performance. Also, we discuss poor enforcement of educational and child labor laws. Then health complications such as body pains, headache, chemical poisoning, as for instance, when children are into artisanal illegal mining and drilling for particles of gold in pits. We also discussed the legal framework or policies in place for tackling child labor. We looked at international policies such as United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, then ILO Convention on the worst forms of child labor, and then the regional policy, African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and the local policy or our national policy, such as the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, the 1998 Children's Act of Ghana, and what these laws say about child labor. Then the last aspect of the chapter discusses implications for social work, social policy, and public health. We look at, we discuss the fact that social workers should partner community members on child labor awareness, create, advocate for strict implementation of child labor laws, because we have them, but they are ineffective. Well, social workers should encourage poverty reduction through the strengthening of social protection programs, such as the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty, capitation grants, school feeding program. Then we should lobby government to prioritize child labor in social policy discussions. We should provide psychosocial support for children engaged in child labor and their families. Then there's the need for us to conduct more research on the psychosocial and health impacts of child labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alice. Really, again, fascinating work. And we've, with Dr. Alice's presentation, we really just get to touch the surface. So if you're interested in diving a little deeper into this work, I want to encourage you to pick up the book, Child Behavioral Health in Sub-Saharan Africa. We have a discount code that's in the chat. If you're watching us on YouTube and you don't have access to this chat feature, you can just look for iChad, which is Dr. Fred's Institute at Washington University, and right on the homepage that the information with the discount code will emerge. So thank you so
welcome.
very much. Thank you. So next up, please welcome Dr. Abdallah Ibrahim, who's from the Department of Health Policy, Planning and Management at the School of Public Health at the University of Uganda. Welcome, Dr. Abdallah.
Thank you, Gary. Nice to be with you all again. Just University of Ghana, not Uganda.
Oh, my apologies.
That's all right. Hey, I call Uganda my second home, so good. Anyway, I'm actually talking about this chapter on behalf of myself and my colleague, Dr. Emmanuel Asampong, who couldn't make it today. And the title of our chapter is Child Behavioral Health in Ghana, Current Efforts in Policy, Research, and Practice. And in this chapter, we actually highlighted many challenges that children in Ghana tend to face. And as in fact, as not just in Ghana, but Sub-Saharan Africa as a whole. And most of the things that we highlighted in this issue that affect children are the use of corporal punishment in schools and also at home by child caregivers as well as teachers. And also children tend to face a number of other issues such as being forced into early marriages, which has implications later in life, particularly with regards to maternal health and other reproductive health issues. And also children, after coming back from school, they are usually also forced into other household chores like doing the cleaning, the sweeping, other things that children are not supposed to be doing once they are back from school, concentrating on doing homework and other things. And then the major other issue that we highlighted in this chapter is the issues of parents or caregivers actually contributing to child's being trafficked from the poorer part of the country in Ghana to the southern part of the country, which is a more wealthier part of the country, to undertake other work for income generation. And all these issues that we highlight actually are things that impact the overall behavioral health of children. And so we then talked about how this is this can be addressed through research, and yet there is lack of research in that area, particularly from places like Ghana or in Sub-Saharan Africa. Where there is research, they are usually or mostly undertaken by colleagues from the West, either by themselves or in collaboration with African faculty. And in doing so, there's always that lack of the nuances at the local level from the part of the Western partners. So there is that issue that of nuances that we highlighted in the chapter. There is also the issue that we talked about in terms of lack of resources that are needed to be able to address these behavioral health challenges that these children in Ghana and for that matter Sub-Saharan Africa tend to face. And where there is resources to address their behavioral health issues, they are mostly centered in the urban areas to the detriment of children that live in poor or rural areas. And yet they all are supposed to thrive and be contributing members to society. And so in Ghana in particular, there's another thing that we talked about. When children face these behavioral health issues, there is no better place to actually take them to get the help other than the non-traditional treatment facilities like the church-run or traditional African belief centers, where the focus is more about religion rather than rehab factors or research influence solutions. And so these are the things that children tend to face. And at these places, they face even further abuses rather than treatment that they actually deserve. And we highlighted the fact that in terms of policy areas, Ghana as a country has, on paper, has taken a number of initiatives that looks really good. For instance, upholding the UN Committee for the Rights of the Child, as well as the WHO International Society for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect. Ghana is signatories to all these conventions. And in fact, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, Ghana was actually the very first country in the world to ratify this charter or this treaty. And yet it is great on paper, but in reality, those things are not backed by resources that the country actually need to be able to address the needs of these children. And for that matter, we highlighted the fact that there is a need to invest or to increase in research on children and their well-being, especially using evidence-based practices that has worked well, particularly in the West, that we think, or maybe even in other African countries, or even within Sub-Saharan Africa, that we believe would be able to help improve the lives of children in Ghana. As a matter of steps that the government has taken, that we talked about, the government has actually recently, I think, almost, well, it's no longer recent, about 10 years ago, passed the mental health law, which also tend to address the needs of children, but yet all these things haven't been fully implemented to the provisions in these laws. And the government has also created a cabinet level Ministry of Gender and Children, which is meant to actually address these needs of children in Ghana. But yet those ministries and all other programs within the country hasn't been well funded. Even within the police or the law enforcement area, they created something called DOPSO, or the Division of Domestic Violence Victims and Children Protection. And yet all these people or the law enforcement people are not actually given the appropriate training to be able to identify what the needs of children are and how do we actually help these children to be able to thrive in society. So we make the recommendation that there is the need to increase the collaboration between the North-South relationship in terms of research, particularly increasing collaboration between the West and African, Sub-Saharan African researchers, or between Ghana and our counterparts in the West, using evidence-based practices to be able to make recommendations that we believe would be able to lead to the improvement in the life of children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdallah, for joining us from Ghana today. It's a real special treat now for me to introduce our next speaker. She has been a colleague and friend for over 10 years. Please give a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Hatisa Hasuji, who's joining us from the Silver School of Social Work at New York University. Welcome, Hatisa.
Hello, Gary. Thank you so much. I am so excited, to join my colleagues again, and I am so excited about this book. And thank you for having me. So great meeting, Jose, Mary, you, and the rest. And I just want to give a quick shout out to my supporters from who are members of AICC in New York who have joined today. And so I know I have just some few minutes, and I will go right to the point. So our title, really, the chapter we wrote, the title of the chapter is Children and Child Behavioral Health in Nigeria, Current Efforts in Policy, Research, and Practice. And, as the title says, we really touched on and highlighted the policy, research, and practice, the existing policy, research, and practice, specifically in Nigeria. But then before I go further, I really would like to acknowledge my co-author, and that is Dr. Edna Madu. She's an assistant, adjunct assistant professor at the Delphi University, and she is here as well. So I am just happy to be in this group and with every other person. So with regards to our chapter, just like I had mentioned earlier, we touched on the existing policies, the research and practice, and just and then really identify what the gaps, and really hopefully we can begin to sort of ring a bell and see if Nigeria could sort of step up and do the needful. So, as we all know, the importance and the need to focus on child behavioral health in Sub-Saharan Africa, particularly in Nigeria, cannot be overemphasized. As we all may know, Nigeria is the most populous country, it's the most populous country in Africa, and hence it is called the giant of Africa. And as such, in Nigeria, there's a high percentage of children and adolescents. Unfortunately, many due to widespread poverty and accumulated by mismanagement of resources from succeeding administrators, succeeding and even current administrators, compounded by social violence, such as what we are seeing, such as the Boko Haram, the insurgents of the Boko Haram, and these are, Islamic rebel groups that are rebelling against the government to see that Nigeria is turned into an Islamic country, and also currently, recently, the Fulani headsmen that are really causing a lot of kidnapping, causing a lot of violence, to civilians across the nation. So many of these children are left, to their own devices for survival, and many more are suffering from mental health issues. So, but unfortunately, Nigeria has not given child and adolescent mental health the priority which it deserves. The first policy, or should I say the only policy, to our knowledge, that impacted behavioral health was enacted in 1916, and it is called the ordinance, the Lunatic Ordinance. And it was later though revised and renamed the Lunatic Act. And that policy gave power to the medical practitioners to detain individuals that are diagnosed with mental health illness. So that policy was focused on social justice and equity, but didn't really address, or try to solve the direct needs of Nigerian children and adolescents. In Nigeria, in addition, in Nigeria, you could see, in the whole nation, there are only, to my knowledge, 8 psychiatric hospitals and less than 200 psychiatrists, many whom lack the training, adequate training to address or deal with children and adolescent mental health issues. Now, when it comes to research, there is lack of representative epidemiological data to support advocacy efforts, and even to support, to inform planning policy initiatives. So that alone is another concern, because without this studies and without research, this evidence-based data, it will be difficult to revise existing policies to make sure they are conceptually and culturally tailored for for this children. And on top of that, aside from the from research, the policy, the lukewarm attitude of succeeding administrators towards funding mental health institutions, as well as training these medical practitioners so that they begin to adequately address the mental health issues of Nigerian children, especially in this era with the violence and with the poverty level, all that is going on, is a huge concern. So this book is this book and this write-up is a step in the right direction in terms of sort of bringing a wake-up call to policymakers in the country, specifically since this chapter is focusing on Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa as a whole. As we may know, in Nigeria, as in most low and middle income countries, just like what my colleague Dr. Abdullah Ibrahim was saying earlier on, the priority, child and adolescent mental health is not given the priority it deserves in this in most low and middle income countries. So as we begin, hopefully, this chapter and this book as a whole, we begin to bring a wake-up call. In my case, for Nigeria to do the needful and begin to, fund institutions and begin to provide opportunities or encourage opportunities for research around child and adolescent mental health, and to look at existing policies and try to, review the existing policies to make sure that they give the priority, child and adolescent mental health in Nigeria, the priority it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hadiza. So wonderful to see you and so wonderful to hear about the incredible work that you are doing. So I want to do we have one more speaker. And again, I'm going to just give another little plug for our book. I'm going to ask Laura to put the discount code in the chat again, 20% off. Thank you to our friends at Springer Publishing for providing that discount. And thank you to our researchers for providing such incredible content and doing, making great strides in the area of kids' behavioral health. So we have our last speaker coming up is Muthoni Muthai, who is from the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. Thank you so much, Muthoni, for being here today. Just going to ask you to turn your microphone on. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary, and my sincere apologies. I'm glad you let me speak after all. I got held up unexpectedly. So our chapter in the book, just to go dive into it, is a child and adolescent mental health in Kenya. Do we need a child and adolescent mental health policy? And with this book, with this chapter, we're trying to argue that although in Kenya we have a lot of treaties, conventions, signatories to conventions, we have acts of parliament, and we have that touch on the child and adolescent, we actually don't have a child and adolescent mental health policy. That is like in other presenters have observed that we have a huge child and adolescent population that makes up about almost 60% of our population is below the age of 24, with nearly 19 million children who are below 14 years. We've also shown with a few studies that we have that there's a high prevalence of mental health disorders among children and adolescents, even in our schools, sometimes going up to 38%, and a lot of comorbidity. So we are saying, although we all have all these conventions, we have conventions on the right of the child. We are signatories to that, the African Charter. We have a national children's policy, which unfortunately does not mention anything about the mental health of children. We have an educational policy and a national school health policy, which in terms of mental health looks more at intellectual impairment, focuses there and sort of stops at that level, the integration of children with intellectual impairment. We have a very good policy on national adolescent sexual and reproductive health. And this in that area really focuses on substance abuse in schools. But it's a good policy because it also mentions issues that we have with trauma, like the female genital cutting of adolescent children, which is girls, which is still a problem in Kenya, early marriages. And we do actually have laws against the female genital cutting of children or early marriages. And the only problem that the problem sort of persists and the implementation has been a bit problematic. So we also have a new mental health act. Our mental health act was revised. We have a fairly new Kenya mental health policy, of which we are very proud of, because we are, some of the fewer countries in our region who have a mental health policy. It dedicates a paragraph also to children, but that with all these things, you get a fragmentation of care. That means that doesn't focus so much on this very, very, very huge population that we have. This population, our population is that population pyramid with everybody at the bottom and few at the top. So our discussion and our conclusion is that although we have all these policies, we need to have a child and adolescent mental health policy that is dedicated just for that, to bring this together. And so to also, because without this kind of policy, we don't get the funding set aside for child and adolescent mental health. So if we need that, we need a policy for that purpose. And basically, I think we present a good argument for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. And one of the things that I've been hearing reoccurring from all of our panelists is how research is informing policy, and how the work that you're doing, you're bringing to policymakers in countries across Sub-Saharan Africa to help them better understand what types of resources and services are needed to provide all of the supports that kids and their families need to live a fulfilled life. So thank you so much for making that connection. Now we're going to head into Q&A. I want to first apologize to the folks who are joining us, because we have way more questions than we're going to be able to get to, which I think is just reflective of really the incredible conversations that we've had today, and and hearing from a lot of our presenters. So I'm going to start with just a more broad question that came in, and this is really for anyone. It says, you know, there's a lot of collaborations happening with non-Western universities, and there's conversations about hearing from South-South collaborations. Have there been any collaborations with China in terms of child development and social work research efforts? Anything going to the East?
So Gary, not represented on this panel, but our colleagues at the Brown School, Michael Sheridan, the Center for Social Development, does a lot of additional global work that might be a focus for another topic. But this work has many collaborations and many influencers. And so I steer you to the work of Michael Sheridan and the Center for Social Development at the Brown School.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mary. Here's a great question that although it is directed to Dr. Mutiyamana, I think many of you could answer it in the lens of your own research, which is, we know there are many factors that influence mental health among children. how do we disentangle mental health problems emanating from intergenerational trauma, or I could put child labor in here, child violence, and those that are results from other factors that are within the environment? How do you tease out those variables?
Yeah, thank you very much for the good question. I can say on my context, like Rwanda, how do we separate the consequences of trauma and the consequences of environment, or the disease-related disorders or family-related disorders, but not directly to traumatic events. I can say at the beginning of the study, we have conducted a quantitative study, and we have regulated the traumatic life events, traumatic exposure of offspring to their PTSD, and they were no correlation. But they were correlation between PTSD of the parents and the PTSD of their offspring. This shows us that there is no effect of traumatic exposure, lifetime exposure of their children, but also there is an effect of PTSD of parents, the PTSD of their offsprings. And the second was then we need to conduct a qualitative study to see what is really the connections of what we can imagine as trauma-related disorder of the offspring, and the connection to those trauma-related disorders coming from their parents. And this was the testimony, the experiences from the children, from the offsprings, saying now those symptoms that we have, they are coming because of our family, parents, environment, not because of other related factors. And the question was directly asking, what do you think your symptoms, your current symptoms, is trauma related or not trauma related? And what we have reported is only those trauma related symptoms. But we know, as he or she asked, there is also a lot of consequences, disorders, which are also trauma related that need to be identified. This is what I can say on my side. Thank you.
Okay, if I can come in here, if you don't mind. Yeah, I'm Dr. Edna Madu, and I want to echo my co-author, Dr. Hatisa Hasuji, for chapter 10. But I also want to bring greetings to the host and all the co-speaker, co-panelists for the wonderful work you're doing, in particular to this question. How do we tease out the differences? I know time is of essence, but I will go straight to the point. I often appreciate the theoretical framework I use for my dissertation, the biopsychosocial model of health and illness. And I think Dr. Mutayima just hit it at the nail, and which is research. Evidence informs policy, evidence informs practice, evidence informs more research. So that means we need to do more studies by teasing out the biological consequence problem factors. We can look at, I'm a clinician, we can look at, even when you are practicing, tease out what you find from the signs and symptoms, tease out the environmental. Research will inform all these. Without more research, without more evidence, without even clinical research, we will not be able to find. So I think the end goal of all this presentation in Sub-Saharan Africa is, let's do more research, let's get more evidence so that we can inform policy, we can inform practice, we can inform even more research for better health for our children and adolescents. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Adna.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I know, yes, we have a limited time. I just wanted to mention briefly that I think part of the question had also mentioned the facts about child labor. And just more recently, we did this study on children dropping out of school and migrating to for child labor. And as part of using the MFG model, and one of the parents did mention us during the process as to how she always believed that, things should be done the way she also were taught as a parent. So for instance, she maybe participated in moving from the north to the south to do what we call kayaye or headquartered labor. And so she believes that this is a norm, but they participated in the MFG sessions as well as financial literacy sessions. And then she realized that education is more important than just thinking that going to do child labor would be able to address all these issues. So things like this, as Dr. Edna mentioned, concentrating on the research or expanding on research to be able to understand these things will be able to help stop that intergenerational issues like that impacting on the children.
What a wonderful way to summarize today's discussion overall. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank all of our viewers who are joining us. And I want to thank Springer Publishing again for providing a discount code. If you are interested in learning more about these topics, I want to encourage you to pick up Child Behavioral Health in Sub-Saharan Africa. I want to thank Dr. Mary, Dr. Ozge, and Dr. Fred, who are the editors of this book, for all of the work that they have done, pulling together the best researchers that are doing incredibly important work across Sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you when we release our next book with all of our additional research. So thank you all for joining us. And we hope to see you on Open Classroom again real soon. Enjoy your day, everyone. Thank you.